we have got Judith Lockwood joining us today. We've come off the show floor today at the Spring Trade Show. Judith is from Mesmeric Distribution. Thank you so much, Judith, for joining me today.
It's a pleasure, Jen. Thank you for asking me.
I'd like to start off just by talking about the brand in general and the brand history. So if you just like to tell me a little bit more about it.
So TI SENTO is the world's best kept secret, I would say. It's over 25 years in the market, and I've had the joy of working with it for a lot of its life. It's a sterling silver brand, 925 sterling silver. Everything is rhodium plated. We're all about the design. We're all about the quality. Remember that thing called Brexit? So following that thing called Brexit, we had to do many things very differently. So one of those is hallmarking. So all of the pieces, because they're sterling silver, have to be hallmarked. There is a legal requirement there at 7.78 grams. And we actually hallmark above and below weight. And that seems to elevate us within the market. It's a range that's priced from £25 through to just short of £2,000.
Huge, yeah.
It's quite a range actually, which is quite unusual. And we seem to have a sweet spot between £59 and probably 800.
Okay,
which again
that's
is
quite a big sweet spot, isn't
quite
it?
a wide mark.
Yeah.
Yes, yeah. And it's interesting. There is truly something for everybody within the range, which everybody would say that they have too, of course. But what we can find is if we do an event, invariably you'll find a girl who's maybe 17 or 18 and she's wearing a piece. You'll find another person, another lady or a woman who's 50, she's wearing the same piece, but in her way. And then you maybe have someone who's in their 80s also wearing that same piece and she's choosing to rock it in her way. So it transcends generations.
So what do you think is that sets TI SENTO apart from other brands then? Like you said, you've got your consumer, which ranges in demographic from an age perspective. What do you think it is that sets you guys apart?
It's interesting because if you ask the brand have, as many do, a kind of idea of who they're making for, who their customer is. And she's this age and she works here and she drives that and she eats there and she wears this fragrance and she lives here. Our customer is absolutely everyone. You know, if we were to open the door here at this event, any single person that we're seeing could well be a TI SENTO customer. I think what makes TI SENTO special is the quality. It is a brand, but so many times we visit our retailers and they're talking about different parts of the jewellery market, whether they're talking about watches or they're talking about competitor brands or they're talking about fine jewellery. And I'll say, well, you know, of course, TI SENTO is a brand. But I think for those retailers that have been with us for more than maybe 4 or 5 years, of which many have, they'll say, oh, TI SENTO is not a brand, it's part of our family. They feel so at home and so comfortable with the range. Something that happened last year was the Lillian Van Zwielen, who is the designer, head of design, her and Orion own the brand. She and Orion made some very brave decisions to take out some of the novelties, to review the range. They listened to lots of different markets. And we've always had top 30, top 60, top 100. And I'm convinced today, because of some of the changes that they've made, we've probably got about 300 pieces in our top 30.
Okay.
So we're all about having family members. And what they have done, what Lillian has done, is she's added in pieces within families that when I look at them, I'm thinking, gosh, now I know that ring was in collection.
It's like a foundation piece for each of those.
Completely. It's been in collection for 24 years. But it's now got a sister and a brother and a cousin and an auntie and an uncle. And I'm struggling sometimes to tell you which piece is the new pieces and which pieces are the older existing pieces, because they just seem to work so well together.
Okay, that's really interesting. So how do you think from a consumer perspective, because obviously TI SENTO is a direct-to-consumer brand as well as it is from a retail point of view, how do you think those consumer preferences have changed or they differ between branded and non-branded jewellery, or do you think they differ?
So When a customer goes in a store, Tisento hasn't traditionally over the years, back in the day when people used to advertise in magazines and on TV and all that sort of thing, it's never done that. Other brands have, and hats off to them. They've done a fantastic job, and that's really good for them. Tisento is known very well within its geographic area around a store. It amazes me if I meet somebody on a train and they say, I've heard of it, I think it's fantastic, I think it's wonderful, and that's great. We have consumers that will shop online. We will have consumers that prefer to go in store to buy. And I think a consumer, for a lot of our retailers, may well do her research online, but she wants to go into the store.
She wants to touch it, she wants to feel it, she wants to see it.
She does. And because of the types of retailers that we work in, they tend to be in towns, small villages, on the suburbs of cities. I think unless you're a major brand and you have your own store, a lot of brands are just not in those businesses unless they're across the multiples. But they actually want to go into the store because they know that Wendy knows what she likes, or Sarah remembers her from when she bought something else within the store. What's also interesting about Tisento as a brand is it has a very good website, but it also has always respected as a brand that Tisento works in bricks and mortar stores. And I think that's quite a refreshing viewpoint today. Again, every brand will work in their own way and they must do what they feel is the right thing to do. But what that does is it gives the retailers that we work with a certain amount of comfort that when it's Black Friday, Purple Monday and Red Tuesday, they're not going to see all the product that they have within their window on the Tisento website with 50% off or something. I can't guarantee that the retailers won't have it. They're independent and have their own name above the door, and they'll do as they please, but that's up to them, I suppose. So the customer has the choice to buy between the two, but I would say that we still have a great customer that wants to go and shop retail in person.
And is that the case from, you were talking about the sweet spot between, was it £59, did you say it starts at? Is that still the case at the kind of lower end with regards to online? Are they still happy to go in store for, doesn't matter which scale it is? Okay, that's really
absolutely. I'm convinced when people go shopping, because I'll do it myself, and I don't think it's just a female thing. I think it could be male, female, or whatever, really. But we will see something and go and buy it. We might see something else, but we don't buy it there and then because we think, oh, we shouldn't or we can't. Yet maybe 3 weeks later, just before payday, we might go in and get it again. And it's like it's come from a different account. It hasn't. So we will go and buy twice.
That's girl maths, Judith.
I think you've nailed that there, Jen. It definitely is. I think it's boy maths as well.
Yeah, you're right. Okay. Do you think that online retail has impacted either sales or marketing strategies for branded jewellery in the UK?
Generally, yeah, I do. I think there are a couple of brands out there, both online and the way that they advertise, have really brought a lot of life to people looking at jewellery again. And I'm going to name, Swarovski would be one, Thomas Sabo, I think, would be another, of course, and Pandora. These brands have really, over recent years and in the past, have really helped, I think, everybody who is in the market. And I think anything that our competitors can do, quite frankly, to bring jewellery to the attention, whether it's online, marketing, social media, has to be good for the industry because it's making somebody think. And if that's the reason somebody goes into their local store or their local town centre to look for something, maybe they do buy that piece of Pandora that day. Maybe they don't. They might buy a piece of Tisento or a piece of Hot Diamonds. I'm checking all the brands here because that's what we should be doing. We have to work
raising
together.
awareness, isn't it, about the industry?
Absolutely, absolutely. We all buy online. We certainly have a last minute moment and you think, I didn't get that present, so or I can't get into town, or I just don't feel like it today. And it's ease of purchase. But to touch a piece of jewellery and to try it on has to be the best thing in the world.
It's the personal, and that's what makes this industry so special, because I don't think there are many other industries like ours where that that element of personalization and the need to be able to touch and feel something is quite so vast as it is within the jewelry industry.
You know, I've always said having a piece of jewelry, it it doesn't put food in our tummy, it doesn't keep us warm, but it's the sentiment, it's the joy of having that piece, of looking at it, it's the memories that it creates, it's the emotions that it creates. I have pieces of jewelry that I look at and I think about my mom, or my sister, or pieces that people have bought me, pieces that I've bought them. I see them wearing it and I think, oh, she's my friend Val. She wears TI SENTO. She has them in, wears earrings, So it's an absolute joy.
Yeah, I couldn't agree with you more. I think majority of the pieces I wear have some kind of sentimental attachment to them.
Significance.
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah.
I agree.
It's not just adornment and fashion.
Yeah. No, I agree. So talking about kind of loyalty now, how important is brand loyalty and recognition in consumer purchasing decisions, do you think, for the jewelry industry in the UK?
I think the consumer is probably quite fickle. I think the consumer is under economic constraints, responsibilities at the moment, paying their bills and their mortgage and feeding them, clothing their children, getting them through education. So a jewelry purchase, I think, is becoming an even more thought-provoking act to do.
I think we're quite lucky though in the industry that we are in, because of that gifting element to it. There will always be birthdays, there will always be anniversaries, and our industry is really nicely suited to those occasions.
It is. To go into a store and you come out either with the box that has the name of the jeweler store on it, or you have a branded box or bag. There's something really special about that, walking down the street holding that, or having it in your Tesco bag as you take it home.
Yeah.
I would completely agree with you there.
Yeah. Okay. Lovely. So what about secondhand? Let's talk secondhand, kind of vintage branded jewelry. Do you feel that that's had an impact on the branded jewelry industry and the rise of secondhand?
I do. I think secondhand used to be something that maybe was looked a little bit down on. It said that I can't afford. Well, most of us can't afford, quite frankly, but we still go and do, or we buy secondhand. Just because something has been loved by somebody else doesn't mean that you can't love it. So there's a lovely business up in Edinburgh, and for the life of me, I can't remember her name, run by this wonderful girl. And she sells secondhand designer jewellery. And designer jewellery isn't necessarily something at £8,000. It might be a piece of silver at £20. But talking about secondhand jewellery, TI SENTO, I see on eBay, I see people selling pieces of TI SENTO, and it seems to be holding its own. And I see, these are private people selling these pieces. And I'm reminded of pieces that we had from collections that were 12 and 18 years ago. But TI SENTO as a brand is a brand that people keep. And I'm sure others are too. And the reason I know that it's a brand that people keep, we have something very special with our after sales. So if somebody comes into a store with a piece of jewellery that they've had 10, 12, 18, 20 years old, whatever it is, and they suddenly remember that they've got this in their drawer and they get it out. Number one, they've kept it for whatever reason, probably sentimental, or they just liked it. It's in their drawer and they look at it and they think, it's not quite as bright as it was. The rhodium has worn. Or, oh, I remember there was a stone out. I must have knocked a stone out. Or the fastener isn't quite as tight as it was. We do something really exceptional as a brand. It's called emotional value.
Okay.
So a customer can take it into their local store or wherever they are. Their store is able to add it onto our B2B system that we have for repairs. They put the code in, and as if by magic, an image comes up. If they don't have the code, I get pictures of this piece, and we have a library, and we look back and we find the code to identify the piece. The piece goes back to the brand in Holland. They then forward it on to our factory that we use, our atelier that we use in Thailand, or they use in Thailand, that they've worked with for all of those years, that's RJC accredited. And that piece is either recast it's remade, it's repolished, it's refinished, and it comes back an extraordinary length amount of time later.
Yeah, I can imagine. It's not a quick process.
No, it could be 12 to 13 weeks. And that person has their bracelet, their ring, their necklace back.
But that's fantastic USP.
It's absolutely extraordinary. It blows me away that they have this archive, this library of stones and fittings and hearing hooks, whatever it veils, whatever it happens to be, chain. And there's only ever once that I've come up against something that they couldn't do, and it was some tiny little 4mm onyx beads, and they said, we just don't have those anymore. And it's my book, because that person gets to love that. Now, if that's not second hand, getting a second life, I have no clue what that is.
I love that.
There's a charge for the customer, obviously.
Of course,
there's a charge, but it blows me away.
I love that. And is that utilised often by your retailers and consumers?
It is. The best thing is, generally speaking, when it's sent back, we will say to whoever we're talking to in the store, they can see it themselves, but we'll say to the store, it's going to take this amount of time. I have the tracking number, so I know when it's going back. So usually about a month later, the customer will come in saying, is it ready? And I'll get a phone call from whoever it is. Is it ready? No. You remember I told you it would take like 12 to 13 weeks, but it could be longer. Oh, do you know where it is? Yes, I've got the tracking number. Yes, it made it to Holland, so no doubt it's on its way to Thailand. It blows me away that a volume business that TI SENTO is. I imagine this room where there's somebody there working their magic. It's extraordinary.
Incredible. That is incredible, actually.
I think we're very possibly one of the few or the only brand that will do something like that.
Yeah, I've never heard of anything like that before, so you might well be. I'd be interested to know if there are any others that do that.
Yeah, I would too. Yeah.
Okay. So how do brands, and obviously relative to TI SENTO and because of your experience in the branded industry, how do brands differentiate themselves from one another in domestically and internationally, would you say?
I think so. I mean, I've worked for some big brands in my life. I've worked for Gucci and I worked for Cartier, which probably left the biggest mark on me. But the same message, I think, transcends across the world for any brand, is that you have to have that brand identity. You have to have that look. You have to have that feel. Difficulties can occur when a brand is distributed by distributors or agents, because
does it kind of dilute the message almost?
I'm not saying it does, but it could do. It could do. I'm going to name check another one. Nomination work extremely hard with their distributors and agents to ensure that everything is done exactly as it should be. We over here with Andrew Michelin, we stick really, really hard to the brand message, and whether that's partly because it comes from having worked for the brand in Holland, I know what they want. I feel like family. I'm in touch with the office. I understand what Lillian, the designer, wants and Orion, the owner, wants. And we want to deliver that. We want the brand to stand out. And it's also interesting that through some other things that I do, I come into contact with lots of designers and makers. And some designers and makers, through something called the Goldsmith Craft and Design Council that I sit on, or the GCDC for short, you can instantly recognise sometimes a piece of work because it has that brand identity. It's like when you hear a new piece of music and you think, oh, I like this song, but I don't know who it is, but I recognise the voice. Oh, it's so-and-so. So a brand has to have that instantaneous recognition, whether it's that logo, whether it's the colours that they're using, whether it's their display, whether there's a feature on a lock or a fastener, or they use a particular cut of stone. You have to have a brand identity.
Something that makes you stand out and keeps you consistently standing out.
Absolutely. So, you know, if a brand starts here with where they want it to go, by the time it hits the store at the bottom, you've got to ensure that that brand is not overly diluted.
So what kind of challenges have either you faced with TI SENTO or in previous brands have you faced, and how have you overcome those challenges?
So
not to put you on the spot.
Yeah, no. So sometimes you can have cultural differences, particularly if you choose to work with brands from overseas, which I have done in my life. I brought a an incredible brand to market a few years ago called Hearts on Fire Diamonds. And in America, when they go out selling, because it's so vast, they'll go to visit a retailer. In that sale, they will make the sale because they're American and they're going to sell like hell and hard. They will train the staff. They'll decide where it's going in the window. They'll tell them how they're going to do it. They'll leave. The stock is sent and they perhaps won't see them again for 2 years, typically. Over here, it's very different because you have to introduce what you're doing. You have to build a relationship, or even if it's somebody that you know, you go and show them. And the retailer doesn't necessarily just have a meter of case space ready to take it. So it's trying to get an overseas brand to understand that it's a different way of working. It's a different way of selling. Sometimes it can be that a product is produced and you know as soon as you see it, there's no way in God's earth I can show that to my customer.
Okay.
And what do I know? I'm not an expert, but anybody who's working in their own market will know the market. And smiley faces were a thing a couple of years ago. I would say with the retailers that work with, I think I did a forecast of 12 pieces and I think we sold 14. Okay. I'm not often right, by the way, despite what I think. And that I was right. I was happy we sold more. But, and if the brand are hearing this, I'll be losing my ankles. I couldn't put that piece in. I thought, how can I go and see our customers? It's too much of a novelty.
Okay.
And present that. So I didn't even put it in.
So that's because you've got a good understanding of the retailers that you work with, the brand, what works in either that region or, like you say, that market in general. You know what works and what doesn't work.
Yeah. So for me, I would say it's cultural differences. Having said that as well, you can bring something from overseas to the UK or Northern Ireland and Southern Ireland, which I've worked in as well. Even Gibraltar at times. I always used to say that Gibraltar was part of the UK. And you'd go in to see a retailer and the retailer would say, oh, well, you know, we're in Blackpool, we can't sell that. Or, oh, we're in Leicester, we can't sell that. Or we're in Glenrothes, or we're in Jersey. Well, bestsellers are bestsellers around the world. Doesn't matter whether you're in Blackpool or Cleethorpes. It's a bestseller and you're going to sell it. And when we're putting a range together for a customer, it's in our interest to sell what we think they're going to sell. And most retailers that we work with a new retailer will listen to what we're saying. On occasions, we've had a couple who are adamant that they want to have what they have because they think they're different to what the rest of the world or the UK is doing. And for me, I'll say, right, okay, let's note this. I'm noting that on this day, you think that you can sell that. When you come back to me in 3 years' time and say you haven't sold that, I'm going to get this out on the record card. It's a bit tongue-in-cheek, but I am usually right in that instance.
So typically you'll lead that when you go into a retailer, you'll lead I suggest that you take X, Y, and Z piece and the reasons being are 1, 2, 3. Or is it a mutual?
It's mutual. It's a bit of a dance. I think it can be overwhelming sometimes when somebody sees a brand for the first time and the way that we present, it can look like there's an awful lot of product and you can see
there are, I'm sure.
There is. It's a big range. You know, you can see panic setting in. Not only do they think, my God, I'm going to be here for 4 hours and I thought I might be here for 30 minutes, but also they can't concentrate. It's just too much to take in. So we try to give a feeling of the brand, and even if in the first layer of product that we show them is not to their taste, what we're able to do is to show something special about the earrings, how the hoops would fasten. They always click. There's a little click. In fact, we even laser hallmarker assay our earrings to ensure that they click because it feels it's nice and safe.
Secure.
We'll show the locks and fasteners on the bracelets, how to put them on. We'll talk about the plating. We'll talk about the hand setting of the parve and show how smooth it is. We talk about the quality. We show the hallmark. We talk about the stones and the materials that we use. And usually at that point, they are convinced. It doesn't matter what the product is. They'll say, well, you know, we're looking to spend about this much. This is our price point, and off we go.
Yeah, then you can negotiate amongst yourselves.
Absolutely.
Okay. So from a trend point of view, then what kind of trends do you see coming into the branded arena from both an innovation point of view and a design point of view?
If I talk to Sento, we're seeing an awful lot of 18 carat still. We use 18 carat, yellow 18 carat gold plating to 3 microns. What we're also seeing this year is a lot of silver and yellow. So it's a bi-colour mix. We're seeing that bi-colour mix. And that's really prevalent on the pieces. A lot of our gold pendants, necklaces would be on a silver chain, for example. So you have got bi-colour. But we're seeing more and more bi-colour pieces coming through. This year we've got shells, we've got colour, we've got chain, we've got lots of silver again, we've got beautiful line necklaces and bracelets, all kinds of different coloured stones. These are pieces that are forever. They're not just for now, they're not just for this season. These are pieces that a lady or the recipient is going to have forever. Other trends that we're seeing is, I think we're seeing Pantone colours aren't always followed, you know.
I have to agree with you there.
Yeah, I think, you know, mocha is not necessarily the biggest hit. Apparently the Italians have 72 words for the colour beige. So sometimes trends actually are not followed. I'm not giving you an exact direct answer here. You might need to cut that bit, Jen. But I can only speak about our trends.
Yeah, and no, but it's really interesting to hear it from anybody's perspective, because yes, you know, they'll say that trends are X, Y, and Z, but equally it's relative to your brands and your collection, and what's relative to one brand might not be the same for another brand. And what's relative to one demographic might be different to another demographic.
It's interesting. One piece that we have got coming through this time, the what people were calling the paperclip look. We've always called it the never-ending look because it's a chain that's just never-ending. It just keeps going, it keeps going. So, and that was a little kind of rounded rectangle shaped look, like a paperclip. We've now got an oval, and to me, that is the evolution of the paperclip without being associated with what is a fashion piece. So we've got these beautiful oval pave, gold-plated earrings.
I must say, it's a gorgeous collection that you've got out there today.
Thank
you. Say lots of lovely coloured pieces, nice mix of metal going on in there. And I think this some of the collection, you're absolutely right when you say it could be for, you've got the right terms for it, the chic and all the different collection names, but it does target a different type of person, a different style of jewellery that can be worn in so many different ways.
It does. You know, if you look at my team, Angela and Micheline and myself, we're all incredibly different. I mean, we just saw them back there telling me to put makeup on. We can wear the same piece, but each have a different interpretation. So last night, Micheline and I at the CMJ dinner, we both had the same necklace on, but she was wearing hers in a completely different way to me. And that was nothing to do with the neckline or her dress. That's to do with character.
Yeah, and the person that's wearing it.
Absolutely.
And isn't that the joy of the beauty of jewellery, that we can style it in a different way, but it be the same piece?
Absolutely. Yeah. Absolutely. I agree with you.
Fantastic. Have you got anything else to add from a jewellery perspective? Any tips or tricks or anything else?
So anybody who's gone into retail, for example, working in the jewellery industry, you are coming into the most incredible world. This world is an absolute gift, and you're either in and out really quick, or you're a lifer. I'm a lifer. I think you will too. I've been in it now over 30 years, which is unbelievable, I know. Tips. If you don't know what you're talking about, tell them what you see and then ask someone who knows.
That is a great tip.
Top tip.
Great tip. Excellent. Thank you very much, Judith. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you, Jan. Thank you.